Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, the Republican Party is taking aim at the IRS, what the new party in power is hoping to accomplish. And House Republicans say they plan to investigate President Biden about the classified documents found in his former office. What we know about those files.
Plus, we're keeping an eye on a late week weather system that will warm us up, bring us rain, and cool us back down. The latest coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts right now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Strong storms with warm temperatures are possible tomorrow, followed by some snow. We've got a little bit of everything headed our way, and that's why it's a first alert weather day. Let's check in with meteorologist Evan Hatter for the very latest. Evan.
That's right, Steve. Wouldn't be the second week of January without storms turning into snow throughout the region, but that is what we're facing as we head through the remainder of we'll see some showers move in tonight, but as we head into the next couple of days, that's when the messy weather gets going around the region. Outside right now, we're warm and we're cloudy. Somerset right now sitting at 59 as the sun sets behind an overcast sky. You see that there UVA-wise. They're a little cooler, as is typical. They're at 50 right now, but we will continue to see the temperatures only slowly fall through the night. Upper 50s to near 60 out there for many of us. Jonesville the exception at 48 right now. Winds out of the south, 5 to 10 miles per hour, really bringing up the warm and moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll see those dew points react to that, getting up to near 50, which is rather high for this time of year. We're continuing to watch those showers push on out of the region. That was associated with the warm front. Clouds, though, continue to move in, and we'll continue to see that potential for gusty storms tomorrow, even with the possibility for a small isolated spin-up tornado. We'll get into that whole threat coming up a little bit later on in the newscast. Steve?
Evan, thanks. In their first move as the party in power, House Republicans voted to strip the IRS of $71 billion in funding during the next decade. Our Washington Bureau reporter Molly Martinez explains why and how it could end up tacking on billions to our national deficit.
It's a direct reversal of the $80 billion that Democrats included in the Inflation Reduction Act for the IRS to do things like improve customer service and increase audits for top earners. In the latest battle in an ongoing war, House Republicans made good on a campaign promise to strip funding for the IRS.
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act, which I opposed, provided a lot more resources to the IRS. Now, some of those resources, like customer service, make sense to me. Others of them, like enforcement, I think went too far.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen debunked the claim that the money would go towards enforcement agents targeting the middle class.
I've directed that enforcement resources will not be used to raise audit rates for households making under $400,000 a year.
For Representative Johnson, the move is an attempt to right the course of reckless Democratic spending.
Anytime the Republicans step forward and start to claw back some of that unnecessary spending, they're going to howl about it.
But the move could end up costing more than it saves. With less oversight and fewer watchdogs, the Congressional Budget Office estimates it would add $114 billion to our growing deficit. Tax expert Samantha Jacoby of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities is also concerned by the bill.
Wealthy people who cheat on their taxes would get a pass.
The bill is unlikely to see any movement in the Democratic-controlled Senate, and the president has vowed to veto the bill if it ends up on his desk. On Capitol Hill, I'm Molly Martinez.
This all comes as the IRS enters the 2023 tax season with a backlog of some 10 million unprocessed tax returns from last year. Late last week, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy not only made the pledge to repeal funding for the 87,000 new IRS agents, but to also ease the burden of energy costs. Here's what he had to say about the, quote, regulatory burden.
We pledge to cut the regulatory burden, lower energy costs for families, and create good-paying jobs for workers by unleashing reliable, abundant, American-made energy.
Speaking of energy, greenhouse gas emissions rose slightly in the U.S. last year. Researchers at Rhodium Group estimate they ticked up 1.3% based on preliminary data. The researchers attribute the increase to the extra heat needed during the unusually cold winter. As a major contributor of greenhouse gas emissions is energy-related carbon dioxide emissions. The electrical grid is moving in a more climate-friendly direction. The report reveals power plants have been using more natural gas and renewables and less coal. The Supreme Court decided today to allow a New York gun law that puts restrictions on concealed firearms to remain in effect for now. As the legal battle plays out, the law essentially bans New Yorkers from carrying guns in certain places such as churches, parks, and doctors' offices. Gun owners who are critics of the law asked in an emergency request for the law to be lifted, saying it violates their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. The High Court denied their request, saying they are not ruling on the merits of the law, but rather choosing not to get involved in the matter. Documents marked classified discovered at President Biden's former office are drawing criticism and comparisons to the docudrama at President Trump's Florida home. And while the volume and circumstances are different, Republican lawmakers are demanding the same scrutiny. As CBS's Nicole D'Antonio reports, we finally heard from President Biden on the matter.
People know I take classified documents and classified information seriously.
President Biden responded Tuesday to the discovery of documents marked classified at his former office in Washington, D.C.
I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office.
CBS News has learned the president was informed on November 2nd, the day of the discovery at the Penn Biden Center in Washington. Another source says the documents from the time of his vice presidency had varying levels of classification markings, including some highly classified.
They've turned over the boxes to the archives, and we're cooperating fully with the review.
Republican lawmakers balked at the discovery.
The irony, you couldn't write a book about this, right?
And a House committee has launched its own probe, asking the White House for all documents from the personal office and a list of who had access to the space.
And this is why we'll get to the bottom of it, because they treat people differently.
The discovery is drawing comparisons to the investigation into former President Donald Trump's handling of classified documents after he left the White House.
In that case, more than 300 documents were seized from Mar-a-Lago after Trump refused multiple requests to hand them over. Democrats say that's not what happened here.
What President Biden did was disclose this to the archives, let law enforcement know. That is exactly the way that you should handle this.
A source tells CBS News the Justice Department's review is largely done. Nicole D'Antonio, CBS News, the White House.
Republicans are also asking top intelligence officials for a damage assessment. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, while you're searching for a new job, experts say scammers are targeting you. Tips to stay safe while on the job hunt.
And more rain heading our way for tomorrow. The latest on when we see temperatures cool down as well after storms move through. That's right after this.